Hello and welcome back to Savvy Sprocket. It is another weekend day, bit of a calm winter day, and I am getting some work done on some projects. As promised at the end of last video, the next project that is back in order is the electric green truck here. As you can see, it has not moved since the last video. It's pretty dusty as well as buried behind a bunch of other things. So the first item on today's to-do list is to go ahead and clean that off, take a couple of the boxes up, and I'm actually going to bring it up into the shop to have a little bit better working conditions on it. It is start of the new year here, so January, it's pretty cold. There's a mild day today, but I have a feeling it's going to get colder and we're going to get wet, so we're going to get it inside and dig back into it. So I just got it pulled out. As you can see here, still has a load of all its parts in the back. But I'm gonna go ahead and just run the Ford 3000 around, let it warm up a little bit more, and then use that to go ahead and pull it up to the shop. This thing is pretty light without any of the batteries in it, and it rolls nice and easy, so shouldn't be too much of a job. Well, I should have probably gotten a little bit of a better rolling start, but I didn't, so that's where it stopped. Just grabbed a little bit of a longer chain, and I'm going to go ahead and pull that up with the Ford here. But first, I'm going to go see if I can find a driver to steer this thing so it's not all over the place. All right, so now that the mini truck is back up in the shop, conditions are a little bit nicer to work on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and get ready to dive back into it. It has acquired a bit of junk on the back of it, which is mostly its parts, but it's covered in another layer of dust for sitting for so long. So I'm just gonna kind of clean it back off a little bit, and then we're gonna dive back in and start looking at the wiring to see about adding some high voltage to it to see if we can finally get the motor to spin. Pretty confident it should have no problem once we get a new battery system set up for it and installed, but gotta take it bit by bit, so let's go dive back in. Alright, so as you can see, this thing is in roughly the same state as the last video, as I have not touched it since. It's been about a year and I've been pretty much focused on the Bobcat build and mainly other house and work projects, so unfortunately this one's got pushed in the back burner. However, now that the Bobcat's running and moving, it gives me a free spot, and I'm gonna kind of refocus back on this to get this thing running and driving, as I'm just kind of pumped for it. You know, it's going to be kind of a small underpowered little truck, but it should be fun. It's going to be 100% electric, and rebuilding a new battery pack out of the used scooter battery cells should be also a fun project, as I've never built any pack that large before. So as you can see, it's covered in dust, and like I said, everything's in the same spot. But I'm going to kind of just review it, get caught back up in my head on where things were at, and then most likely the first immediate project is going to be diving into the scooter batteries that I still have up at my house. I have to go through and test them all and just see what state they're all at. The first few that I had tested were in pretty good shape, so I think we should be in business. I ordered a few extra, and we'll get those kind of strapped together. I'm initially thinking I'm going to do some sort of kind of test pack with just, you know, some wood, a couple ratchet straps just to hold things together, and I'll probably just throw it out in the back here, just to get things wired up and just make sure the rest of the main components do work before I build it into kind of its final pack. And I'm also not 100% sure still where I'm going to put the battery, if I'm going to put it back up underneath the cab where you can see that empty spot. There was that original large battery tray with those big 6 lead acid batteries. It's a pretty good spot, but the new pack is going to be much smaller, so I might be able to kind of sneak it in somewhere better to potentially, you know, have more space for storage clearance, or also to build a bigger battery pack for longer range in the future. But should be a really exciting build. And once this thing's driving and moving, I'm going to get rid of this patina on the side. I don't know, it looks like it has some holes in it. It's been rusted out. Someone maybe tried to fix it, but it's pretty rough all around. I mean, I got it for cheap, but it should be a fun project, and it'll be fun on the road. So stay tuned, and I'm gonna continue on. So the first order of business after I just got it cleaned up there was diving back into the wiring system and finally kind of learning where everything is connected. And thankfully I was able to come across a service manual that has the kind of high voltage and actually low voltage interconnect kind of schematic, so that matched quite well to this particular unit. I did actually start by manually going through, and it's like a 35 pin connection that goes into the Curtis controller there. I went through and kind of manually mapped out all those colors and was trying to sort it out, but then that's when I came across the schematic, which was able to speed things up quite a bit. So I just kind of spent some time. It didn't end up recording it just because it's kind of boring just to kind of stare back and forth and test different wiring connections. But for the most part, I have a good deal of it now figured out, both on the 12 volt side of the system as well as back over on the 72 volt side of the system. So what I went ahead and did was just kind of clean up essentially the connections that I'm pretty sure I'm going to be needing and not needing, tape off some of the ones that I don't need at the moment, for example like the heater core, and actually that contactor over on the side next to the Sevcon DC to DC converter controls the main heater core that's stuck up under the dash, basically actually hooked up to the main original fan coil. So I don't need that, and I have some other things that are disconnected that I'm not going to need to test this out. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is just reconnect the 12 volt power and confirm that I have the same kind of life out of it as I did at the end of last season. It should be exactly the same. Nothing kind of got into it. I mean, it was in an area that there's a bunch of mice, but there was no remnants or evidence that anything had been in there messing with anything. So I'm going to go ahead and reconnect that 12 volt power, just confirm that everything's connected there, and then finish up wiring a bit of the 72 volt system together. I am missing 2 components that are supposed to be mounted down on this plate, one of which, kind of up in the top left hand corner here, is just a key, what they call a key switch relay. It's just a basic relay that essentially takes a trigger from the 12 volt ignition line and basically turns on, tells the controller to turn on the main contactor for the 72 volt system. The other module that is missing down from this heatsink is what they call the current sensor control box. So it has a handful of lines as well as this current sensor plugged into it that's wrapped around the main line, telling the controller how much power is flowing through the main 72 volt line. The 12 volt reconnected, you can see that the power is back on the dash. Everything seems to be functioning just as it was before. Fan works, blinkers work, lights do engage, but there's no bulbs hooked up to work. So 12 volt system looks fine. What I'm going to go ahead and do now is refocus my efforts onto the 72 volt system. And what I was able to determine, one of these control box down here that is actually missing, essentially is the trigger. Basically it feeds a 72 volt line into pin number 1 on the Curtis controller, which is basically the turn on. switch, and one of those control boxes actually kind of uses a combination of the two relays there to make that happen. But what I was able to trace out was basically just this red line just needs to feed on the blue line, which is pin 1 on the controller, and just hooked up a basic switch to make that happen temporarily. So essentially with the 12 volt system turned on, that should turn on the 72 volt system with that switch now. And what I need to just finish up is connecting the kind of main battery cables to my little 72 volt jumper pack, which I brought 2 of the scooter batteries linked together in series to give me from 36 to 72 volts. And I'm just going to wire that together with this main disconnect button, just in case we need to hit everything and power it off. So I'm going to go ahead and get that wired up now. right, I am basically ready for the first high voltage test of this thing since I got it. I have the rear end up off the ground just so the wheels can spin freely, assuming that the motor is working correctly. And I have my test 72 volt pack hooked up through a bit of a custom little DIY interconnect. I'm only using small XT60 connectors on the battery pack itself, but then obviously the larger gauge cable is what the rest of the truck used. I did also rig up just this disconnect switch just in case something that I don't want starts to happen. Everything else should be connected up in the right spot. I have, the 12 volt system ready to go, and then I have this small switch over here, which when I hit that is going to hopefully power on the inverter, and I should be ready to drive the motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the batteries plugged in here with the disconnect switch off, pop that on, and see how it goes. Connect up 12 volt first. It's connected. Keys in the off position. So I have a orange flashing light on the controller. Main contactor is engaged, saying that it's in neutral. I take the parking brake off. Parking brake off. And forward. And the wheels are moving actually without pressing the throttle. Back to neutral. See if it'll go in reverse. In reverse. Look at that! It's working! So that's just basically paused. Back to neutral. Let's try a little bit of the throttle here, going in forwards. Forward. Brake seems to work. Let's try the throttle. Hear it? More speed. Oh! It's working! Back to neutral. And with that, the truck has life. The main contactor kicked on without a problem down there. You can actually hear it humming a bit still. I'm not sure. It is running at about 84 volts, which is a little bit higher than the lead acid batteries would actually ever charge up to, but it seems to be working on that. You can see that the dash on the display is in neutral currently, and we can switch it into the forward position. It says forward, and the motor is in the forward motion. Works in reverse also. Go back to neutral, into reverse, and you can see the wheels are spinning in the opposite direction. So this is great. This thing has life. At this point now, I am excited. I'm actually going to throw it back down on the ground and push it out and see if it will move under its own power with just this small pack. All right, it's back down on the ground and we are ready for the first live test under its own load. Gonna hop in and see how it goes. All right. 12-volt connect. Main power on. Volt on. It works. See if it goes forward. Goes forward. So there you have it. This little green truck has life again. I just drove it up the drive a little bit and it has basically plenty of power to push itself along. It is very stiff given I did shed about, what, 800 pounds of weight when I pulled all those lead acid packs out of it. However, it's going to gain a little bit more weight once I do fully go ahead and rebuild all the scooter batteries into a full main pack for it. But big first check mark is complete when the motor and the inverter work. Super excited about that. So I think that's just gonna about do it for this video here. I'm gonna go ahead and actually just drive this thing around and see how it drives a little bit more. But if you like this video, go ahead and hit that like button, and if you haven't already, hit subscribe, as this is going to be a long-term project for me. As you can see, it's still a bit of an ugly duckling, but we're gonna get it fixed right up once we get the electrical squared away, and hopefully get this thing back on the road. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.